Hello YouTube. This is a video response to harveysuperboy and his video A Reply, Pro-Black and Black Nationalist. What is pro-black? Is it only an individual who finds favor with those who identify as black or prescribe to certain telling behaviors that are characteristic, maybe stereotypic of a black group? This may be, but for some it goes a little deeper than this, doesn't it? There are those that subscribe to the use of adorning their bodies with various accessories. By projecting a certain image, they display an outwardly increase in their blackness. Is this the objective? This superficial movement is seen as acceptable, but if they couple with a person outside of the black group, then they become anti-black? If this is so, is this due to seeing ourselves as superior and those in the outgroup as inferior, the perpetual enemy, or contemptible? Is it convenient to see this individual as suffering from a mental disease? It appears it is easier to mislabel the person as self-hating or those in black skin who identify themselves as white. This was called an Oreo back in the day. You do know that the edge of this criticism is, in practice, blunted by creative imaginations that can conjure up cognitive dissonance or non-actualized possibilities. All this work done to promote an agenda? In any event, I can see how this only subtracts from the supposed desire of unity and increases division. It appears the pro-black movement is not one established on positive attributes that is contributed to humanity via the group, but mainly a reaction to white supremacy. Reactionary ideological movement tends to breed behavior that is contrary to the welfare of its supporters. In the last 2 decades, I have seen the media markedly increase the labeling of blacks as being more violent, sexist, homophobic. I did not have time to gather data which would prove or disprove this, but I have visualized this. I have seen it. The word more requires comparison, and I do not see that as a needed action. So I will not travel that path. This is not to say that these negative traits do not exist within individuals who are black. They do, and this can easily be shown. However, I have also seen much confusion about another negative trait, that being racism. What the media would like to list as black racism. I will state again, as I have in previous conversations, there is no such thing as black, white, fill in the blank here, racism. There is only racism and those individuals who wish to practice this belief system. The internet is a place for racial indoctrination. This I detest with a passion. I will not yield to that activity. This said, let's not be sanctimonious and declare racism does not exist within black people. Let's also not make excuses for current behavior based on past events. Now, I know it is a popular idea which has been circulating for years that blacks are unable to be racist because they hold no power. Power that would be mandatory to change the way another's life is fundamentally directed by law, commerce, and social realities. Let's look at this. There is some truth to this. A minority presence will never yield via direct and sole minority action. Again, via direct and sole minority action, the amount of controlling influence necessary to fundamentally oppress the lives of the majority. This is why I state black supremacy is a pipe dream in America for those who desire this development. Let's shift gears. Notice the suffix ISM as we examine the word racism. The suffix ISM shows that the word previous to it is a system of beliefs, doctrine, or school of thought. No one who is capable of making decisions is prevented from adopting mental constructs. Any person can subscribe to this particular worldview. All they have to do is embrace intrinsic genetic and cultural superiority. The next step would be either to use this doctrine to discriminate or to abuse an individual or group. If we cannot come to an agreement on what racism is, no further conversation can occur. This is part of the problem in today's complex world. I think the dynamics of our current society demands a more refined definition of the word racism. This does not mean I disagree with the one we have now. I do think it can be made better. If expansion is not needed, then the addition of vocabulary to correctly address the subtleties of prejudice, bigotry, and racism would serve us all well. It is common that most groups rather point the finger instead of conforming to reality. It is unpopular to condemn a group member who is creating an unwanted image. I propose that unless we point the fingers at the culprits, ridicule the institutions of racism and its individual practices, we cannot socially progress as a human species beyond a very limited stage. If racial pride prevents those who subscribe to it from being rational and using discernment, then it is an archaic concept that yields no return or little return for the investment required. An interesting point that you do bring up is regarding a group going against their own economic and political self-interests in order to spite those in the out group. We have seen this repeatedly occur. This is brought about by superficial division. Social distance makes it acceptable to restrict certain degrees of intimacy. Again, a faulty mental acceptance of others based on personal or external authority, which does not have to be based on fact. Even immediate personal knowledge can be colored by mental filtration. Belief indeed drives behavior. On the flip side, we can see the same process occur in reverse during times of economic, food, and safety stress. These stresses, if left unexamined, can conflict based on the opposition of believing versus learning. Even if a member of various groups find each other undesirable, they can come to an agreement on how not to diminish their general position of stability. This is found in all groups. Let's look at certain sectors of minority youth, while keeping in mind one who works against their own self-interest. Today, it is common to encounter a classroom dynamic where one sees a preference for meaningless pleasure over lasting achievement and an irresponsible attitude towards life due to certain beliefs, actual activity, and sometimes irrational, emotional, and mental processing. We can see an increase in animosity towards institutions and norms of white society. Certain deductions made from observations may or may not be legitimate. Unfortunately, this bad blood has been encouraged, rationalized, and institutionalized through the work of black nationalists and others. When remembering the hardships of my immediate family members' struggle with authentic racism and with having a historical perspective available via storytelling and documentation, I can understand certain hatred. Hate directed at various individual actions and the systems that make this possible. If not put in check or if misdirected, there is a social and economic consequence that dismantles the possibility of progress, especially when we are observing minority presence in a majority society. Let's examine the negative attitudes that some black students have towards academic success, which is seen as selling out or acting white. Rarely do you see a child want to advance in a system that they have problems with. They extract themselves from the process of learning, thereby not using their potential to expand their critical thinking and to become creators. This is a crystal example of the self-destructive consequences of black animosity towards white society. One can build healthy relationships with people without identifying with and assimilating into mainstream society. But mainstream society is code for white society in many cases, and not necessarily a society that is not wanted due to various compositions that have absolutely nothing to do with links in one's mind to race. Rarely is there any balance in this assessment, and self-interest is substituted with inappropriate movement. I do not know what world you reside on, but the so-called black community, like any other so-called community, is not a righteous entity. You had me almost doubling over with laughter when you said that the collective of blacks except those from a bi-ethnic ancestry. This is a generalization and not a fact. If you have proof, please show it, because I do not see this. I am paraphrasing here. You made mention of how you dislike black people critiquing and mislabeling each other by certain white contributions, white language, white standards, white ideas. What is white language, ideas, and standards anyway? I need you to expand on this, if you would, please. If you are speaking about stereotypes that are known to promote prejudice, then I understand your upset. I do not think you are here. You followed up with the statement, "It's black supremacists." Tell me, where we dress in certain types of clothes, go into the middle of the woods and talk about blowing up government buildings and killing innocent men, women, and children. End quote. When addressing supremacy, such hyperbole is not needed. Not all who are correctly labeled as supremacists resort to such tactics. Again, black supremacy in function cannot exist in America due to lack of power. A black American can label him or herself a black supremacist. We can examine groups like the Black Hebrew Israelites and the New Black Panther Party to see yearnings of black supremacy. I would urge the term is normally used to exaggerate the position of another, just like the inappropriate use of labeling a person a racist or falsely identifying something as racism. It inflames the situation, normally shuts down communication, and promotes the necessity of one to abandon the issues in order to defend their integrity. I agree, we cannot use a false equivalent, but for different reasons than you. The point is, we have people who are black that aspire to dominate and defeat whoever they see as the enemy. Like racism, aspirations are not prevented due to lack of power. Power only figures into the equation when speaking of application. If they want to hang that title on themselves, I'm willing to not contest it. You made a point I do agree with. I have encountered many Jewish people who become aggressive and vocal when blacks use the term Holocaust when referring to tragic happenings and the amount of people lost to institutionalized racism, individual racist acts, and slavery. within America. So, from this perspective, there is a certain language which is not deemed appropriate to use. I think the term Holocaust, when speaking of various types of atrocious behavior that has resulted in loss of life and destruction of culture, is legitimate. Honestly, I think there are certain Jewish individuals that use history to promote a current victim status. Unfortunately, when they encounter real issues, the cry wolf syndrome bites them in the ass. We see this poor behavior mimicked by certain blacks that refute reality but love their victim card to release them of personal responsibility. You do see this disingenuous position can be universally applied, right? It would be unwise to trust someone that has not proven themselves trustworthy. I'm sure you would agree with this. This applies to individuals, not groups. Groups, first and foremost, is a collection of individuals. You want to allow vile behavior of hate from blacks because many of us have had negative experiences or interactions with white people? Really? People can say what they want, but not in my presence. I normally have control over that. They can leave or I can leave. I am open to dissent, but not to hate. Anytime a person yields support to hate by allowing it, or by not removing themselves from it, they function as an enabler. If there is one thing a black nationalist has said that I actually agree with, it is when they label the crooks, killers, and pimps as deceivers and double-crossers. Their reasoning stops because they are solely focused on those who look and act like them. So, being a traitor to your people equates to acting like the historical oppressor, not being anti-human family, however. This is where you and I think very differently. You think we should not take white talking points and use it to address our issues. I think we should not take anti-man doctrine to address the realities of this world. Thank you for your time.